All right, at this point, I think I'll go ahead and introduce Dana Johnson from Cast Iron to speak about accessibility, which has been an ongoing focus for our platform. Take it away, Dana.
All right, thank you, Eric. Yeah, I introduced myself earlier, but I'm Dana Johnson and front-end developer at Cast Iron Coding. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the work we've done on accessibility on Manifold. Some of this work is a part of V7, but accessibility work goes back quite a few releases now. So I'm going to kind of talk generally about some of the improvements we've made, and later in the presentation, I will circle back to a part of V7, an improvement we made on V7 that we think is pretty exciting. So yeah, this work really began with version 2 about 4 years ago, and each release of Manifold since then has kind of quietly but steadily removed accessibility barriers from the application, from anything from color contrast issues to fixing the hierarchy of headings on pages, adding alternative text to images, adding missing keyboard functionality, screen reader announcements, and many other things. So this is a little screenshot here of accessibility related issues on GitHub. As you can see, kind of between V2 and now on V7, we have closed 139 different issues that we flagged as accessibility related. It's important to kind of point out that accessibility is a process. It's an ongoing practice for us. It's not something we can solve in one release and ship it and call it done. The work is really kind of continuously identifying and fixing features of the platform that present barriers to groups with different disabilities. So to that end, we have some partners at the University of Washington. We work with the libraries as well as the Accessible Technology Services team to do regular testing of Manifold. We meet with them regularly just to learn more about accessibility. They also report issues for us in GitHub, and then we often collaborate with them to implement fixes for those. As a team, we also rely on the W3C's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's also known as WCAG for short. They have different levels of conformance, and we strive at a minimum to make sure that Manifold's features all meet the AA conformance level. Meeting AA criteria doesn't make Manifold universally accessible, but it does ensure that we've resolved a lot of critical barriers for people with a wide range of disabilities. And besides going back and addressing older accessibility bugs that exist on the platform, we're also always making sure that any new features we release, like reading groups, journals on V7, anything new we create is not introducing new accessibility issues. So we follow kind of best practices in our industry around accessible code patterns, making sure everything is AA compliant, and receiving real-world user testing with the help of the University of Washington. And just to emphasize too that, you know, for accessibility on Manifold isn't for us really all about just kind of checking boxes, meeting criteria. I just want to make clear too that it's you know, Manifold is engaging, it's joyful, it's meaningful, it's fun. And it's really a critical value for those of us who build Manifold to make sure all of those qualities are made accessible to all users. So I just want to highlight a few of the things we have addressed over the years. The examples I've chosen kind of give you, I chose to give a sense of sort of what's involved as a developer, front-end developer doing accessibility work on Manifold. Also, to demonstrate kind of the range of potential accessibility barriers that someone might encounter using a platform like Manifold on the web. So the first is color contrast. Low contrast interfaces present problems to users who experience color blindness and other visual disabilities. We had our designer, Lael Tyler, a few years ago do a study of color on Manifold and come up with a series of recommendations for changes to our palette. These follow, WCAG provides recommended contrast ratios for foreground and background colors. And as you can see, maybe in this image, this screenshot, that really meant kind of revisiting kind of the neutral colors we use and the accent colors to make sure in different contexts that they provide sufficient contrast. Another one is keyboard accessibility. So for those who rely on the keyboard to navigate web pages, or for those who just prefer using the keyboard, it's critical that keyboard interactions are visible on the web page, and that user actions work just as they would if they were to be using any other input device like a mouse or a touchscreen. So one aspect of that we have addressed is to make sure we have indication of focus anywhere that somebody is navigating. So if I'm here, just as a quick demo of this, if I'm here on the back end and I tab through this, all of the interactive elements on this page, you'll see that there's a green box around each of those elements to tell me that this is where I'm focused. If I hit enter now, I can interact with that link or button or other, form of interactive element. So this is the kind of thing that if you're using a mouse, if you're not using a keyboard, you might never notice this, but if you are relying on a keyboard, and you don't have this, it will make it impossible really to use the page. So this is one of those kind of subtle but very important pieces of accessibility. Another one is making sure that someone using a keyboard can use any of the interactive elements, any of the kind of form controls on Manifold, just the same way that anyone using a mouse would be able to. So you can't really see what I'm doing here, but I'm using my tab key to tab to these, and then hitting enter to add a new text. I can engage with these form inputs. I can upload images, and I can cancel or save adding a new text here. We have a drag and drop interface here, and I can select these, and I can rearrange pieces of this drag and drop interface the same way that I would if I were to be using, like, clicking and holding a mouse and doing drag and drop. Another one is announcements to screen readers. So interfaces like Manifolds that have a lot of dynamic user interaction. It's really important that any user actions that kick off some kind of visual change in the interface also have a corresponding announcement made to screen readers. So a couple examples of that would be this is a screenshot here of doing a search on the front end for projects. You can see in the top left here, this little dialogue here is from VoiceOver, which is the built-in screen reader on Macs. You can see that it's announcing as the search results change live on the front end, we're getting an announcement that of the count of the new results. Another example is if I'm on the back end saving a project, sighted users will see this notification bar at the top announcing that the project has been saved. There's a corresponding screen reader announcement announcing the same thing for those using screen readers. And finally, the last one I want to highlight is reader annotations. So this is something we have done for V7. This was, like, to my mind, kind of like the final boss of Manifold accessibility. It's just something we have been wanting to do for a long time and have been kind of working our way up to it. So, annotation is a very fundamental part of Manifold. but it's always required someone to be using a mouse to select text and then to interact with the pop-up menu that appears after that. So we've really kind of reworked this from the ground up to be able to make it usable with a keyboard. So there's a couple pieces to that I want to show. The first is that any existing highlights or annotations on a page are now reachable with tabbing, the same way any other interactive element like a link or a button would be reachable on a page. So I can tab to any of these highlights or annotations. I can select them, and I can then, in the drawer here, engage with this annotation. The other piece of this is being able to create new annotations just using a keyboard. So this feature involves a built-in part of the browser called caret browsing. This comes standard. It's built into Firefox, Chrome, Edge. Apple devices have something similar built into the OS. Safari does not have caret browsing, but iOS OS has something called mouse keys, which kind of function similarly. So I'm in a Chromium-based browser here. So I'm going to enable caret browsing by hitting function F7 on my Mac, which can ask me to turn it on. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's now a little cursor blinking here within the text. So I can kind of navigate around with my keyboard and find the spot I want to annotate. And I can hold down Shift to start selecting characters. I can also hold down Option to select whole words at a time. And when I let go, I will have the pop-up menu appear to allow me to do things, to do any of these things. I can share it, I can add a resource to this, I can annotate, I can highlight it. And I can select that, and now I can create an annotation. I may have canceled out of that. I can't see behind my little Zoom window here. I might have canceled that. But in any case, that is now fully usable just with the keyboard. Any of those events, whether I'm tabbing, whether I'm interacting with this menu, all have corresponding screen reader information as well. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up with that, this is just to add one more comment about that. This is really kind of a sort of novel thing that we are doing on this with the accessibility of this feature. We don't, for parts of it, we don't really have kind of existing best practices or design patterns to follow, and so we've really relied on feedback from the Accessible Technology Services Group at the University of Washington. And so they've been great partners in testing this out and giving us really meaningful feedback. And we've gone back and made improvements. And we really welcome additional feedback from anyone else in the greater Manifold community as V7 is rolled out. So just to wrap up, I just want to emphasize that it takes the hard work of a lot of people to do accessibility on Manifold. So we have, our partners at the University of Washington. We have the team members, the Manifold team members who meet with them regularly to review the platform. We have those who use Manifold and make their content accessible, and the Manifold team members who support them in that. And then the designers and the developers who build Manifold. So it really takes everyone's involvement to get us to this point where we're at now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dana. It's really incredible to hear all the work that you guys have done to make Manifold accessible to everyone with its kind of full potential. It's just amazing. I want to say thanks to Terrence Smyer and Matt Gold, who have really been integral to the effort as part of the Manifold team. We're pretty close to the end of the hour, but does anyone have any questions for Dana or any final questions about V7 for Zach or anyone? All right, well, thank you all so much for being part of the community meetup today. Hope you enjoyed it, and just be in touch. And we're so glad to share this new release with you all. Stay cool, everyone.